In this episode of the podcast, we're talking to my friend, Nicole Chan Loeb. So look, Nicole is one of the best wedding and portrait photographers in the world. But saying she's just a photographer would be way too much of an oversimplification. Nicole's one of the smartest people I know. And before photography, she was actually a consultant with Deloitte. Many of you know that that's kind of a big deal. She was actually there for around 6 years before deciding that it wasn't really for her. Now, she eventually left and started up a wedding photography business as her first successful business. She had to do this being the daughter of Asian immigrant parents, which we will talk about because that in and of itself is no easy feat either. Then after doing that, she went on to create another business that has nothing to do with photography. It's called Trapology. It's a Boston-based escape room, which, well, was doing incredibly well until 2020 kind of shut all in-person events down. We're going to talk about that experience and how she pivoted into another company called The Sterile Guys, where she basically offers a sterilization service to other businesses. She and her husband have 3 incredibly successful ventures, and y'all need to hear from her and her experiences. She's absolutely brilliant. So let's go ahead and dive in. This is the TSS Podcast. It's a place for authentic conversations to uncover the stupid, simple truths that help us succeed in business, create better relationships, and lead more fulfilling lives. Welcome to Think Stupid Simple. Nicole, I love having this productive excuse to be able to catch up with you. Does it not? Here, hold on. We gotta do our lighting of the candle.
Ceremonious.
It is ceremonious. It's our happy space. I'm gonna put this right under my nose today, because I feel like I need a little bit of a wake up. Mm-hmm. It's very early over here, but you're into your morning in New York.
I feel like, it's 10 o'clock here in Boston. It's early here too, but I guess it's even earlier over there. Was it 7?
It is 7. We are usually up around, Anthony, I'm at 5 to get here in time. What time are you up?
5.
5?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I won't complain.
I put this on the schedule as an option. So it's my fault. I need to change the scheduling slots. But no, I appreciate you taking the time. Now, unbeknownst to you, at this point in the conversation, our amazing audience will already have an introduction to all the awesome things that you do. But you are a photographer. It's not even fair to just to say that you're a photographer. I feel like entrepreneur, business owner. You have a photography business that thrives on its own. You also have Trapology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Trapology started as an escape room company. So we design and build and launch escape rooms for people. We have a brick and mortar location in Boston. And then the cool thing is that Trapology also spun off into this interactive entertainment platform where companies hire us to create immersive experiences for advertising and to reach their target client and to engage their consumers.
Wait, so that's wild. So you started Trapology as its own experience, but now you're being hired to create experiences for commercial companies. As if there's nothing what is a commercial company? Okay, I'm struggling here.
It's early.
It's a little bit early. I feel like I have a little bit of a hangover that has accompanied me into this conversation. So you're welcome, audience. I'm sure this is going to be extra fun. So that's kind of wild because on top of that, you also have, and can you pull up Nicole's website, just her photography website, Anthony? Okay, so you are one of the best photographers in the world. Tons of awards, tons of recognition. Are you an ambassador as well for?
There's this tiny little company called the SLR Lounge, and I'm an ambassador for them, and I'm very proud. They seem to be, making a blip in the industry, and I'm happy to be one of them. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I wasn't trying to get to a shameless plug by that, but thank you for that. Well, outside of SR Lounge, I didn't know if you were like a MagMod or a Pro Photo ambassador or anything else. on top of
Yeah,
that. But you know what? You're an SL Lounge ambassador. You don't need to be anything else. Like that is good enough.
I've peaked. This is it.
I hope not. I hope you have. So in addition to wedding photography, which obviously in 2020 that was a strug, a strug.
You've got to inhale more of the candle real quick.
I don't know if this is a good idea to be placing it like right under my nose. I think the oxygen deprivation may be enhancing my mood. So what was for you 2020 New York weddings? I mean, is that even a thing right now? Like what's going on there right now?
Yeah. 2020 Boston.
Do I keep saying New York? You're in Boston.
Same time zone. It's okay.
Same time zone. That's how every West Coast person, like everybody in California is pretty much like, yeah, they're just off to the east somewhere.
They're just tiny. I mean, all of our states kind of add on to one giant colossal state like yours. But yeah, Boston weddings were a cluster. Can I swear? I won't swear. It was a cluster.
You can swear.
It was no, I won't do that.
We'll put explicit lyrics onto the podcast episode. It was a dumpster fire?
I have a funny story. I have a funny story about explicit videos and stuff. But
okay, tell me about the dumpster fire and then the explicit story.
Yeah. So the dumpster fire, which was awful. I mean, we had close to 80 or 90 weddings for the entire team for the year. And I would say that the grand majority of them moved over to 2021, 2022. And, the hard thing for an events-based company like ours is that it's not necessarily, it's kind of a one-time thing, and we can only photograph one wedding per day. So when you can't photograph one wedding and it moves to the next year, are we available for that date? And then it takes up that slot. So that new 2021 revenue can't come in. And now that 2021 is a little dicey as well, specifically for the spring, 2022 is looking a little scary too. So we've had to pivot in a couple different ways to make sure that, our investments in all of our businesses and our lives and our lifestyle, they all kind of maintain the same. So we've had to make some changes in our businesses. And 2020 wasn't, I had a baby, so it wasn't awful. There were some happy things that happened.
We had a baby too. I feel like that's going to be a common theme in 2020 and 2021. You're stuck at home, like what else to do other than make a baby? Like
for sure.
It's just good sense. It's good sense. So for those that don't have context in, let's say, the events industry, I'll give a little idea of how this impact is, because at first glance, it sounds like, oh, your business has just shifted from 2020 to 2021. But that's not really the case because, like you said, weddings, I don't know if I know you think about this, and we're going to talk about this separate. But we do, as a wedding professional, you're doing all of your marketing to get essentially this one-time client, essentially to get, you're getting each new wedding is a new client. I mean, you hope that it's a new client. If it's a repeat client, that might be a little bit interesting. But you get 90 weddings in 2020, and then they reschedule, and we want to all accommodate what's going on in 2020 with the pandemic because nobody had control of this thing. So we allow them to shift their dates to 2021. And along with that, their deposit. So usually they have a 50% deposit or some sort of amount to hold the date. But what that basically means is that in 2021, you don't have infinite capacity to shoot weddings. So it's not as if you could just shoot your 90 and then add another 90 to it. Like you have a limited number of days in the year. And then we also have like limitations in our team size and what we can do. So basically all of your 2020 income then displaces 2021 income. And now it looks like it's going to roll into 2022, which is kind of where we estimated 2022 was going to be the year that things start coming back. But that's a huge impact for small businesses.
Yeah, it does not look bright.
Now, this is the other cool thing. So I met you actually it was at the Breakfast Club retreat, right? Mm-hmm. That was the first time that we'd actually met in person.
Yeah.
But one of the things that kind of, I don't know, I felt like we connected on, it drew me to you was the fact that you came from kind of corporate experience. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. You and I, we're kids of immigrants. There are certain career paths that we are nudged towards forcefully.
Nudged with a whip.
And I followed. I feel like I tried to be a good kid. I tried to lead a life where it would be responsible and conservative fiscally so that I could take care of my family when I got big, when I grew up.
How
So I
dare
went into
you.
finance. I know, when I grew up. So I grew up, I went into finance, I went into management consulting. I looked into accounting for a little while. That was a hard no. So finance was a
You were
softer
smart.
side to the things. I mean, not everyone's smart enough to get a CPA like some people. So
Are you
it just didn't.
that okay? Well, we're gonna have to address that now too. You keep opening up these windows and doors that we got to keep addressing. Okay, but keep going.
So it just, I was in industry for a little while. I traveled full time for the consulting firm. And to be honest, I felt
Which
like I was good
consulting
at the
firm
job.
were you with?
Deloitte.
Deloitte. That's kind of a big deal. Like, it's important that you share that little note. Deloitte is like one of the largest consulting companies in the world, one of the largest accounting companies as well.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I loved it. The people there were brilliant. They were assertive. I had a lot of really great role models there. And at a point in life, I could see myself being a Deloitte lifer. I could see
Uh,
myself making partner and, buying a boat and getting chubby and just sitting on the boat and doing nothing. But then
buying a boat and
eventually,
getting chubby. Okay.
big aspirations. But eventually, that the glitz and glamour of the boat kind of it lost its sparkle because I saw how difficult it was. I saw how challenging it would be to balance all of the things that I wanted to do and that specific career. So I thought, maybe this isn't a great fit for me. So
What
they
was the
haven't.
stuff that clued you into this? I'm sorry. We have plenty of time, my friend, so I like to get into the details. But
Yeah.
what clued you into that realization?
Uh, there were a couple of senior managers that were trying to get partner, and they traveled 5 days a week. So, or 4 days a week. It was called the 3-4-5. 3 nights at the client site, 4 days at the client site, fifth night at home. So
Jeez.
Monday morning, every morning, we would jump on a plane somewhere to fly. And I remember being in this like, oversized, very uncomfortable business suit that I just did not fit in with like their, Deloitte issued little bag for my goofy laptop, and boarding this plane and very excitedly getting priority seating because I had flown like 100 flights a year, uh, and then just sitting there in first class and thinking like this is cool. Like I feel like I've worked hard academically to make it in this career path, but then when you spend every single night alone in a hotel room eating the same general food, making a decent salary, but not being able to spend it on family and friends, and essentially missing every cool facet of your life on the weekends because you're too busy having calls with, or conference calls or work calls, or we call WebExes, with their offshore team for development stuff. I was in technology strategy. It kind of wears on you, when
For
you're
sure.
when you're crushing in 120 plus hours a week. There's not much life left to live. And then I
There's
thought, I'm not
nothing
sure
left to
if,
live at that point. I
yeah, like
mean,
I'm not sure if I want this.
how many of your I've heard 100 to 120 hours in the consulting slash investment banking side is very typical. I mean, it's kind of an expectation. But for context of your weekly hours, how much is that? 24 hours a day, you minus 8 for sleeping and whatnot.
I
What
don't
are
know.
you left with?
I didn't get the math gene.
A week
Not
is
much.
144.
Is that
So
like what's that?
a week is 144. So 120 a week. That's crazy.
We're having some struggles right now with basic math,
What?
but you're pulling at least 14 hours a day, basically 7 days a week. Yes,
Right. Wait,
which
7 days a week, right? So
seven
there's
days a week
160,
that's
168
98
hours.
hours. Yeah. So if you
Yeah.
did 7 days a week at 14 hours, that's 98 hours. So
Right.
100 to 120 means that that's actually starting to cut into your sleep right now. So yeah, of course you have no time for anything whatsoever.
Hmm.
But it's interesting how that so you were smart to at least go the consulting route, because I feel like the dummies got convinced to go accounting. Because we were sold this pipe dream that, like, look, you go into audit, you go into accounting, and at the big four, you're going to still have your life. You're going to still be able to, you know, you're going to get paid less, but you're going to have quality of life. That's what the big sales thing was. And then once you start working, the culture is almost identical, where you're encouraged to do 60, 70, 80, 100 hours a week during busy season. And you're like, I just got suckered into a job working about the same amount of hours and getting paid about 1/3 of the salary, if not less. So we were the suckers. So good call on the consulting side.
I guess. Well,
I
we both got
guess.
out, so I guess. I mean,
How
we're
long
both
did you
out
make it?
now.
How long did you go?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
6 years is a lot. That's like senior manager. Were you a senior manager?
No, so one of those years was still in college, so I interned with them, and then it was an up or out strategy for them. So what they did was, before you made um, senior consultant or a manager or senior manager, you had to go back to school and get your MBA first.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it was my kind of golden ticket, and it was my get out of jail free card, because then I said, okay, cool, like let me look into this, and then I hired a consultant with this company who specifically uh, specializes in getting people into top MBA schools. So I thought, perfect, this is great. Let me pay a gajillion amount of dollars to have this woman help me do everything from craft my essays to make sure that I study for the GMATs, and then also help me ace this interview, because, as you can understand, I suck at interviewing. And,
I can't
you
understand
know,
that, but okay.
so that was a whole year process. And then I remember, as I was going through this essay process, and there's this one school that has this one question that asks, what will you do with this one crazy life that you have? And it was hard for me to answer. And it was hard to answer authentically, because I think what they wanted me to say was, I wanted to go into investment management and baking and do all this stuff for this career and change the world, and then maybe start a fund.
Yes.
And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to help. I wanted to help people like me, people who may not realize that there was a passion there, women, minorities, Asian Americans, and I just couldn't find the space for that if I was working a jillion hours a week.
Yeah.
So eventually the consultant said, hey, Nicole, maybe you need to do some soul searching. And I said, maybe, but I don't really have the time to do that. And then she goes, well, why don't you take the rest of this year and just think about it. And it was only November, so it wasn't exactly like a whole year, it was a couple months. And so I took a couple months, thought about it, and my then boyfriend, now husband, reminded me of all the times that I bawled my eyes out on all the flights, every time I came home, every time I had to board another flight, about how miserable I was, and that maybe consulting wasn't ideal for me. So then I just said, okay, cool. Let me halt all my applications. Let me not go back to Deloitte. Let me go take pictures instead.
Let's unpack that piece for just a moment here. So you leave Deloitte Consulting and you tell your parents you want to take some photos?
Not exactly. I just didn't tell them at all.
Okay.
I may have told them that I got staffed on a local project and took those few months to develop my business while I was still on the extended healthcare package that my company offered, so that nobody had to know.
This is hilarious. So at what point did you break this to the family? Because you're Taiwanese, right? Are you Taiwanese or?
Jason, my husband, is half Taiwanese. My family is from Hong Kong.
From Hong Kong. Okay. Yeah, it's. I mean, I can share this with you that it's an unusual thing for an Asian, child to tell their immigrant parents that they've quit to become photographers. So, how did this conversation kind of go when you did decide to reveal this? How many months in were you?
Like a year and a half.
You went 18 months. Just, and this whole time they think that you're still at Deloitte, basically.
Yeah, and it worked because it took, I think, 18 months. I really hope she never hears this, but it took about 18 months to slowly coffee drip into her that, hey, this could be a career that would be sustainable, that I could take care of myself, that I could take care of you, that I could take care of my brother, because that was important to all of us. And I think you just need to drop a little breadcrumb here and there, because if you just drop the bomb, I mean, that bad things happen.
Can you please share what one of these breadcrumbs look like?
Oh, did you know that photographing weddings allows me to be home more, to clean your house and to cook you food?
And she's like,
And
that's weird, considering that you're a consultant, but okay, I guess.
and
Did she start putting it together?
I don't think so. You have to appeal for some people, specifically my mom. I think you have to appeal to all the benefits first, and you have to appeal to the long-termness of things. And to be honest, I was making it up as I went along, because like, who knew the longevity of photography? Nobody could have predicted 2020. Nobody can predict 2055. Who knows what's going to happen? But I think at the end of the day, I think that she liked the fact that I was around. I think she liked the fact that I helped out with her. She probably liked Deloitte's constant salary. I don't think that she was very happy with the concept that photography was a little up and down for the most part.
Yeah.
But to her core, I think she knew that no matter what, I'd probably eventually land on my feet, whatever way it took me to get there.
So when you actually told her 18 months into it, what was her reaction to it?
She doesn't yell as much as she did when I was a kid. She's like a tiger mom light. She's
Mom light.
She's not as crazy as some other tiger moms, but she definitely was strict. She definitely had her priorities on academics and performance and stuff. But as I got older, and she realized that I was more difficult to contain, I guess that's the best word. She really, eventually, when I told her things that she did not want to hear, which was rare, she just sort of does this, and then she walks away. And all of a sudden, immediately, I got transported back to like 4-year-old Nicole that did something very, very, very wrong. But at
so
that
she
point,
actually did that when you said, I quit and became a photographer. She went,
yeah,
and walked away.
yeah. So she says, well, it is not too late to go back to med school. And then we didn't talk for a day or two. And now this is highly uncomfortable. We live in a 2-family house in the south of Boston. And
Two
she
room
lives
or
upstairs.
2-family? Like
Two family. What did I say? A 2-family house.
I don't know what that is. A 2-family house. Like,
What do you mean you don't know
is
what
this?
that is?
Well, like I know what a two-bedroom house is, but what is a 2-family house? Like a house that has two separate entrances?
Yeah, and 2 different numbers, 2 different kitchens, and one
that's
has
like
3 bedrooms, the other one has 3 bedrooms. They're just attached to each other.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay. Go ahead. Keep going. I've
Yeah,
heard it
so
differently, but that makes sense.
Oh, so she's I guess some people also call them duplexes.
That's what I've heard. Duplexes. Or
Oh,
like,
okay.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we live in a duplex. She lives on the top floor,
Two-family house is fine.
and I live on the bottom. So there have been times where I haven't seen her for a long time because I
Yeah.
would travel for work, but not when I'm home. When I take vacations or I take breaks or the team says, hey, let's work remotely for this week, I see her often. And oh man, she cold shouldered me for a while. And eventually she came around and then she talked to me and she said, I wanted to let you know that when your grandfather was moving out of his house, there was, I guess there was like a guy that painted the house walls. And he said to her, "Hey, I remember you." And she said, what are you talking about? And then he goes, "I photographed your wedding." So she said, "If you become a wedding photographer, you will someday work for somebody else doing a blue collar job, painting homes and fixing toilets." So that's what she told me. She was pretty upset. Disclaimer, there's nothing wrong with painting houses. There's nothing wrong with fixing toilets. I paint houses and fix toilets all the time. My own.
Well, another disclaimer, this sounds exactly like the made-up story that our Asian parents would like. Come on. Is your
true.
painter that's painting your wall really the same person that was your wedding photographer and you don't remember?
No one's mentioned that to me. Yeah, that's probably not
No one
true.
said that.
I don't share this story very often, but there was a point I was like, oh gosh, like this is true. I could fail. Like I could
Yeah.
fall flat on my butt. I could not book any more weddings after, the 5 that I have this year. And I would be forced to go back to consulting, or worse, go back to school and then go back to consulting again. So I got very, very scared. And to this day, I am still scared of having to go back to that job and that miserable point in life where I hated working so much for somebody else. I'm just not good at working for somebody else.
No, I'm with you. I still have those recurring nightmares. Like that's one of my nightmares is that I'm back at Ernst & Young doing accounting. But speaking of like, we got to talk for just a second about some of the like I want to call them immigrant idioms, okay? Just so it has a nice alliteration. But they're all the things that like our parents would tell us that had no foundation in truth whatsoever. As soon as you said that, I was like, dude, that's a total immigrant idiom. Because like, come on, what are the chances that the guy painting your house is the same guy that photographed your wedding? But like in the moment, your mom's probably like, I got to come up with something. She probably spent the 2 days just thinking about like, what story am I going to concoct to scare the bejesus out of Nicole?
And I think that's what they do.
They do. My dad used to terrify me that if I did not dry my hair sufficiently, I would catch a cold. Did you get that one?
Yeah, I got that one. I got, if I didn't finish all the grains of rice in my bowl, they would end up becoming worms. Somehow these uneaten grains of rice would be the exact worms that would grow inside of my stomach and eat me from the inside out.
That part, that's terrifying. Are you serious? You could make an entire like horror movie around that concept. Like what if one plantation delivers rice and all the rice in that becomes seedlings in people's bellies? That is the foundation of a really great horror story.
Yeah, there was another time where she said that if I ate the seeds in the orange, that my brains would turn into oranges as well. So, and I just happened to be counter height at the time. And I said, I've already eaten orange seeds. And she goes, it's too late. And then she like reached over my head and grabbed an orange. And she said, they're already growing out of your ears. It's just, and I remember just crying hysterically forever because I just imagined like, I can't wear a hat. How am I going to hide an orange tree that's growing out of my ear?
That is, but like, I kind of think of it this way. Like our parents have seen some shit. I mean, like they have seen some stuff. So if they can have like a little bit of happiness by kind of terrorizing us with like little small things, I feel like that, that brings a little joy to their lives and we should allow them to have that.
But I was an adult at that point.
You were an adult at that point when she's pulling oranges out of your head?
No, not the orange story, but like the whole painter situation.
Oh, the painter situation, yeah.
Yeah, she knew how much I hated painting because my parents used to rehab a couple homes when we were younger, and I just hated the painting portion.
She did concoct this story. She literally
the corners and stuff and the edges.
She knew exactly what you despised most, and she designed a perfect story.
She always sounds like
you never
this.
Questioned.
Yeah, my friends always mention, oh, she's such a, Nicole's mom, she's such a cute little lady. Like, she's so nice. She's so sweet. She's a terrifying woman.
People don't understand the love. Our parents ruled with love and terror. That is how the home worked. I was 29 when I left Ernst & Young to become a photographer. And I made the mistake of telling my father what I'd done. And I was like, Dad, I quit. I'm gonna do photography. And he was like, this marks the day where you have made the biggest mistake of your life. And he goes, if I had known that you would do this, I would have never paid for your college education. And I was like, well, Dad, like accounting taught me a lot. Like, I feel like, I'm going to go into this and I'm going to be successful. And part of the reason I'm going to be successful is because, accounting taught me a lot. That didn't fly over too well. So yeah, that was
just hearing that. Gosh, just hearing that gives me the stomach pits.
Yeah, no, it's but I've also I've been one of those that so when I was 19 years old, when I was in high school, I was a really, really bad student. Now, I had ADHD. I wasn't clinically diagnosed having ADHD until literally like 3 months ago, okay? But I knew something was up. I never was clinically diagnosed, but I knew something was up. The interesting thing is if you have ADHD, most people around you just think you're dumb. The reality is that no, you can learn. You just have to learn in a very specific way. Like you have to know the whys. You have to approach things from why does this matter, and then you can absorb. My dad was one of those that just thought I was dumb though. So, and then eventually, I kind of bought off on it too. So in high school, I'd just be like, I'm just not good at taking tests. My grades weren't very good. I couldn't get into good colleges, and I bought into the whole narrative. And when I was 19, I had the chance to go and do this service work where I learned Cantonese and Mandarin. And my friends at the time were like, we're really worried about you going on like to this place. This was for I used to be practicing Mormon. And so Mormons will go on this 2-year service mission to volunteer and do service work. And sometimes you get asked to learn a language. So this is for that job, right? So I get my calling and it says you're going to learn Cantonese, and Cantonese is the second hardest language in the world. And immediately like my family and my friends are like, this is great and all, but like, we don't think that you can learn the language. And they were like, we're very concerned that this might be the wrong calling for you. And I go, this is, I shit you not. This is what I told my closest friend and at the time. I go, you believe in God, right? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, so do I. We're in this place, aren't we? We're both Mormon. We're in this place. And I go, so what you're saying then is that, this calling, which is supposedly, y'all say that this is from God. This calling is supposedly wrong. Is that what you're like saying right now? And he's like, you state a good point. I don't really know. I'm just worried. I'm like, look, I'm going to go and I'm going to give it a shot. Anyway, long story short, I end up learning Cantonese. I learned Mandarin and I speak it better than anybody else that has ever gone to that place. And I later would go on like television shows just to speak because I actually sound native when I speak Cantonese. That was the place where I realized like, you got to stop listening to what other people say. Like, that was the point in time. So I was 21 years old when I learned the lesson of like, don't listen to anybody. So when my father told me when I was 29, you made the biggest mistake of your life, I was like, yeah, this is just like every other biggest mistake I've ever made. Like, it's going to be fine. They don't see the same things that I see. So it's okay. And if it is a mistake, it's a mistake by all means.
I distinctly remember the first time I met you and you started blabbering away in Canto. And I just thought, holy crap, this random Iranian Mormon guy speaks Cantonese as fluently or better than my Cantonese. And then I was like, I need to reevaluate my entire life now.
We haven't spoken Cantonese in a long time.
Yeah, there's a good reason for that.
There's a good reason.
That might be the last time I spoke Cantonese too. But I am.
It's funny though how we buy into these narratives that other people create for us, and it's weird that like our educational system is almost set up in a way to kind of like, if you don't learn and experience the world in the way that it's set up for you, then you're kind of labeled as the deviant. And then a lot of times we buy into these, these stories, these narratives of like who we are, when in reality it's nothing like that. So today, that's the crazy part is today for you, if someone was to, we look for these really easy ways of like classifying each other, right? We want to put each other into these nice little boxes because it's easier for us to comprehend. And they're like, oh, this is Nicole, the wedding photographer. She just takes pretty pictures for a living. But not only do they have no clue the level of images that you're capturing, but then you go and you start Trapology. So I want to talk about the building of a successful, photography business, but the fact that you went and started Trapology, which at the time, can you describe what that is? When you told me the concept, I was like, what is an escape room? Like, this sounds like something that you would only build if you were kidnapping people. Like, it didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Well, an escape room, when we originally played our first escape room, it was a white room with like $200 of IKEA furniture. And I had a great time. I love puzzles. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And I had a great time with my friends. And then there was my husband in the corner crunching numbers. He also comes from an accounting background. He understands math and he can actually do things in his head. But he's crunching numbers in the background. And he was like, Nicole, they are making X amount of dollars per week at 50% capacity. And at 100% capacity, this is what they're doing. Like, can you imagine? And then I thought, no, I just can't imagine that our friend didn't see this, and cost us the entire game. And then I sort of brushed him aside and I said, Jason, are you going to help play this game or not? You're just going to sit in the corner and do math.
He's on a completely different wavelength.
He was the most useless player on the planet. So he's like, I'm just going to keep thinking about this more. And I said, there are times and places where you can think about that. Right now, we have to get out of this room because we just have to win. And
because we just have to win.
So we did not win. We went to a bar afterwards and we sat there for 2 or 3 hours just talking about how much fun we had. We blamed each other. I said things, people said things. It was great. It was very fun.
I said things, you're basically like slandering each other, verbally bashing each other for the lack of effort.
Definitely. I made somebody else pay for my mozzarella sticks. It was great. These are my best friends. But I just had a great time. Like, it was something fun to do. And then a couple weeks later, we spent a month in Tanzania, and then we had a layover. And during the layover in Istanbul, we said, let's figure out something to do. And we had already been to Turkey a couple times. So we just said, let's just relax. And I was on TripAdvisor. The number one thing to do in that specific area that we were at was this one escape room. And Jason and I sort of looked at each other, and my mom, who was also with me. She's very important. I love her. She's crazy, but I love her. And I said, Mom, we should do this escape room. And she says, no, I don't want to do any of your more crazy ideas.
Wait, at this point, do the escape room just meant to go through it, right? Not to start up a business.
Right. Just to play it. Just to play it. And this escape room, I don't even think was a legitimate business. It was in a college dormitory that was created by these 3 college kids, but these 3 talented college kids, an engineer, an architect, and some tech guy. And it was incredible. It was a couple steps below a very nicely produced Disney production where like you go through multiple rooms. There were sound effects, there were light effects, there were, they must have coded it with an Arduino that like secret compartments would open. There were secret hidden rooms behind walls and moving furniture. We had an incredible time. And then Jason and I took that flight from between Istanbul back to Boston, and we said, we're going to do this. We're going to bring this back home. There's no difference between this college dorm room and a place that we could rent out. We can build stuff. And at the point, my husband was not a handyman. The concept of him using power tools to build anything was just not, it was comical. Now he's very handy. So Jason, if you listen to this, now you're very handy. I'm very proud of you. I love you. But I thought we could do this. Like, I love puzzles. He and I met in a theater group. So we were already kind of used to, performing and making, this big show of sorts. And we did it. We were one of the first in the country to open up an escape room. And it took a lot of education to our consumers because they were very scared that we were going to lock them up and never let them
Yeah.
go. But eventually we said, it is a 1 hour experience. You go in, it is a jail cell. The story is that you got super drunk at a Red Sox game, you got thrown into jail, and you had to find a way to get out. So people gravitated towards the story, they gravitated towards the whole concept, and they had a great
Yeah, how
time. It went
brilliant tying
crazy.
it to Boston sports, because Boston sports is so huge. But that's a
Yeah,
brilliant
people are
idea of
nuts.
tying it to that concept.
Yeah, and then we did a couple projects. We went a little viral, and you know, it kind of snowballed from there. Now we've got 6 games that we rotate in and out, and someday when we're allowed to reopen again, it'll be great.
Yeah, so that's the other. Well, I want to talk about that too. But when did you actually open up the first Trapology? This was in
True, that was 15.
2015. Okay. Do you guys have more branches now, more locations, or are you guys focused on the one location?
We have 2 leases on 2 floors. We were
Okay.
going to open up in separate cities, and I think that we still have them in the plans. 2020 was supposed to be our year of growth.
Yeah.
We we had a lot of big aspirations. Unfortunately, they got put on hold, but we'll get there.
Yeah, everybody's got put on hold. When you describe this escape room and the entire thing, I'm sitting here thinking in my head like, I wonder how many psychos out there are already like, hey, we've already got this thing built right here. I didn't know we could just like charge money to get people to come through for fun. like okay,
It's true.
we could just convert this. We could just convert this into a commercial entity.
There's so
No,
much more though. I mean, we could use it as like a front. We could use it as money laundering. We could deal drugs from there. There's so many things that could happen. There's
okay.
lots of opportunity.
We here at Think Stupid Simple do not support or endorse any of the things that we have just said. And now keep going. Proceed.
But think big, think creatively.
Think creatively. Well, that's incredible though. So now going into 2020, so looking from the outside, right? 2019, I would look in and say, well, Nicole's businesses are very well diversified because you have the wedding side, which for the most part runs itself. I think you have pretty beyond just shooting, you're pretty minimally involved in that side, right? And now you have Trapology. I would think that this is like very nicely diversified in terms of like you're building this nice portfolio of revenue streams. Then 2020 comes along and says you can't do anything in person, and events go, and your in-person experience has to go. What then?
Sure. So then we think about, what do people actually need? And there comes a point after you go a little hysterical, because there was a point where I go hysterical. And
Yeah.
I think everybody, or maybe just me, I'm not sure. But for me personally, I needed to sort of get that emotional release of, holy shit, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Are we going to be eating cup ramen noodles for the rest of our life? And
I had that released
actually,
very publicly, if you remember.
yeah, I mean, I to be honest, I don't mind ramen noodles every day. Like, I like noodles, but I like the option of other things. And I think that's the luxury of the life that we live, to have those options. So now we have very pregnant Nicole sitting at home doing nothing, self-isolating, thinking, what are we going to do? And Jason tends to have a lot of crazy ideas, and then I shoot them down. Or vice versa. I have a lot of crazy ideas, and then we shoot them down. The ones that stick are the ones where we both have crazy ideas, and the other one says, it's not bad. It's not awful.
Yeah.
And
Let's talk about that for 1 second, because I feel like, so often we have this issue of being able to disagree, especially in like this 2020, 2021 like frame where it's like, if you disagree with me, you're my enemy. And it's a really terrible narrative, and it draws me back to the same thing that you just said, where so many times I've had really great business ideas that I think are great that get shot down by Justin and Chris. I've also had so many times where I have really horrible business ideas that would probably bankrupt our entire company that they shoot down and prevent us from, sinking our time into. But this this like conflict, this kind of back and forth, on ideas and being devil's advocate and shooting each other's ideas down, it's so important. Disagreeing with each other is so important. And what you just said, the ideas that make it through that extra filter are the ones that are generally much stronger.
Yeah.
So
I think that for the Venn diagram of good ideas, it is very important to have somebody or somebody's, a group of people that are able to poke a bunch of holes in there to either say, hey, bring this back to the drawing board. It's not an awful idea. It just needs to be better baked out. Or,
for sure.
Maybe put this to rest. And if I come back week after week and I'm still very, very stubborn about it, like I had this game idea about dinosaurs that I really want to have happen from day one. And I'm just going to keep going at it. And our employees, Tina and Mike, they're always like, Nicole's still in the dinosaur thing. Someday I'm going to get my dinosaur thing. But right now,
I'm gonna get my dinosaur thing.
But right now, they just keep shooting it down. They don't even entertain me anymore. They just immediately change the subject.
Is this the dinosaurs again? And you're like, no, it's about a raptoria.
Right.
Which is a
They're
type
like, are
of
you still
bird?"
talking about the stupid dinosaur eggs? No one's stealing dinosaur eggs. And there's like, I understand why they don't like it. There's a lot of underlying thoughts of like abduction and things like that. But but again, but yes, I agree with you. Conflict is great.
Well, it also tests your resolve, right? Because so often, one of my best litmus tests for myself is if Justin and Chris poke holes in my ideas and I give them up, that's a pretty good indicator that I was not, into this thing enough to like make it work anyway. Like if I'm willing to give it up just because someone pokes a few holes in it, then that's an issue. But what's funny is they were poking holes in my book and my podcast for probably like a year. And it was kind of like, I'm going to keep refining the approach and the way that we're going to do this. And it stuck. And I was like, I think this is something that actually goes with who I am and my values, and it's going to be sustainable. And this is what I want to do. And I pushed it all the way through. And eventually, I presented enough information where they're like, okay, let's do this. And they were all on board and into it. And honestly, the launch and the way that we've approached it is so much better. But man, I can't think of any like better way to just drive off a cliff than to surround yourself with people who agree with you nonstop.
Yeah,
Which
that sounds
is,
also very boring.
It kind of is how politics are being set up, though. Like if you don't agree with the things but that's what the whole purpose of like a two-party system was. It's the whole purpose of like debate, negotiate, like all of this was to get us to a better place as opposed to the groupthink that would lead us into really bad decision making.
Right. Absolutely. Groupthink is going to be the demise of us all. And I think that to go even more off track, young women aren't always encouraged to speak up, to think independently, to be aggressive. Maybe not aggressive, that's not the right word, but to cause a little bit of a wave. And that's really challenging too. And not just young women, but specifically maybe people who don't speak English very well. That can be very uncomfortable as well to say, I have this idea. I can't really verbalize it as eloquently as I would like to, but I want to pose a second thought and a different perspective. And that's really, really hard to break molds out of.
Especially, I mean, you have like everybody has certain of these and to say that, well, you said that we're going off track, so fine, well, let's just go off track then, Nicole. But we all have these inherent kind of, I want to call them like biases, but like they're basically like different things that are kind of things that you have to overcome, right? These different obstacles. One of them is being female. Like, let's just be honest. That is one of the things that is going to be something that you have to overcome, especially in the line of tech that you were in. Tech consulting, it's a different breed, and I almost feel like the women that go into tech. So Yen, my partner, is a woman in tech. I almost feel like you have to overcompensate by working harder, being more vocal, everything, just to get the same amount of respect in the field. So that's one. Then the minority thing is another. Then the which family you come from is another, and what is the wealth and kind of upbringing that you have, that you're born into. All these different factors that kind of become these obstacles that we have to overcome. But tell me, did you feel those when you were starting your own business in wedding photography? Like when you were going into the wedding photography business, were there aspects of that you felt that were present?
I think that wedding photography was a smoother transition because it was already very female dominated, especially in the Boston area. However, there were a lot of situations where people would come up to me and say, wow, those cameras must be so heavy. How do you do all that? Wow, you know exactly what you're doing. Like, it's a good thing that cameras can shoot on automatic these days.
It's so insulting. It's so incredible.
And you're at a wedding and you're working. Oh, I'm at a wedding and I'm working. That's not a place where I bring up conflict. And that's not a place where I go on my soapbox about how I do understand technology, but how I do know how to take a picture and expose properly and all the other things. Or how I do work out and these aren't that heavy. But
they would say that stuff to you like you're so fortunate that your camera does everything for you. That's so
right.
That's wonderful.
Right. Or how fortunate that you have a second assistant that can carry your bags for you. What would you do without him? This is true. Right. I would have to carry my own backpack. Or, there were times where people would go straight up to my assistants if they were male and just say, oh, would you like to tell Nicole your assistant? And they would have to go through the awkward situation of, oh, thank you for the automatic assumption that because I am male, I am the lead here.
That is one of the biggest assumptions. Like I've seen that happen to so many of our team members like it happens to Shiv all the time where she's leading a wedding and the coordinator will go up to her assistant and be like, so what would you like to do here? And Shiv's like, I'm the lead photographer. Yeah, that so aggravating.
Drives me nuts. But at the same time, now I've grown to embrace it and say, oh, yeah, you're in charge. Let me just go melt into the background. Let me photograph things that I actually like to photograph. You do all the boring family things. So I think that, after my emotional outburst of why is this so unfair? Why is this not okay? Then you've got to spin it into making it work for yourself. And the people who do matter are the ones that trust you and the ones that know that you're going to do a good job. So I pick when I want to say things like, oh, yes, I do speak English well because English is my first language. What's your excuse?
Nicole, your English is so good. Oh my
your
gosh.
English is so great.
How did you learn?
So there's all sorts of things. I've got a very small list of, little comebacks that'll jab at people if necessary. And it makes me feel a little bit better. Maybe it's not the most mature, but I do it.
Maybe it's not the most.
And then eventually, I sit back and I try to help other people who actually want to learn and listen about, prejudices and biases and stereotypes, breaking down those barriers. And 2020 has helped a lot with that. It's helped a lot with opening people's eyes. And, I'm very proud of some of my friends who have taken the time to say, hey, maybe white privilege is a thing. Hey, maybe I have been taking advantage of it. What can I do differently? So I think 2020, in all of its crap-headedness, some good things are happening.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the conversation is going in the right direction. There's a lot of people that are learning about it. I am of the opinion that you should genuinely take advantage of every form of privilege that you have. I mean, if my parents were wealthy, I would find ways to use that wealth to grow my businesses. If I was a white person, I would use that privilege as well. My whole thing is use every privilege that you have to do good, to do positive. Just understand that it is a form of privilege. Like that's the thing to me that was the one thing that I was hoping people would kind of take away from this is the fact that I'm not a black person growing up in the middle of the projects. That is a form of privilege. I didn't have to deal with any of that stuff, which means that more of my time and energy can go into other things than simply having to, navigate safely through this neighborhood. Now, I had to figure out how to navigate safely as an Iranian kid during the Gulf War amongst a bunch of angry white kids who seemed to think that Iran and Iraq are the same thing. But still, that was dramatically better than I would say so many people's experiences in this country, let alone in other countries.
I agree with you 100%. However, I would like to make a point that perhaps it is not as clear to some people to use their privilege for good things when the mindset is, well, I've made it and I've worked hard. If you work
That's
hard,
true.
you can make it too. And I think that because, not to say that we've suffered immensely, but because of our hardships, we understand how much of an impact it can make when we say, hey, let's do something small for the community. Let's do something small for people who are struggling in different ways than we have. But for some people who have not experienced that, it's harder to come to that realization.
For sure. And they think it's very easy to think that you are self-made when in reality you are generationally made. Like you are made by all the work that the people before you and your family have done, and you've ridden on their back all the way down to this point where you have the opportunities that you have. I've had a chance to do quite a bit of traveling, going back and to some very poor places in rural China, and it's kind of wild. There's a movie that actually just came out on Netflix. It's called White Tiger. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't, but it's on my list.
Okay, it's a good one. It's a good one. It's almost like, it reminds me of Slumdog Millionaire in the way that it tells the story. Very similar kind of story and framing and all that kind of stuff. But it's a story of someone who kind of goes the other direction. Grew up in this poor village, and you're just not given a lot of choice and opportunity. I mean, and the whole driving factor for everyone is just putting food on the table and making sure that your family lives. You know, that's really the main driving force. And the amount of opportunities and things that are afforded to somebody that is born into that is just, it's made very clear in the movie. And it does it's very entertaining as well.
Yeah. When I went to a nonprofit trip a few years back, and when I was looking around at some of the people around me, it was a nonprofit trip with an organization called Too Young to Wed. It was an organization that helps child brides. We were in Kenya, and it was fascinating because when we talked at night after the end of the day, you know, just to decompress and talk about what we were doing tomorrow and how we would function, it was, the big revelation that came to me was that we had all hit the birth lottery with where we were born and the time that we were born. And, you know, to be born in a time when possibilities are endless. You know, we're born into a time of technology where we could learn essentially anything on YouTube, where libraries are ubiquitous and you can self-educate yourself, that college is not the only way that you can make it. And that there's so many ways that you can support yourself and your family, and how we probably really take that for granted. Because I look at my parents, I hear, because now I spend so much time with my mom and our new baby, you know, we talk about what life was like when she was growing up. And she was talking about how her mother, my grandmother, would go and they would get like these cardboard things and all these like small clothes for baby dolls. And she would have to like put them on and like zip tie them. And then my grandmother would then bring all the finished zip tied baby clothes onto the cardboard back to the factory, and they would package it and send it out. And that's how they would function. That's how they would make their money, as my grandfather was trying his businesses. And gosh, my childhood seems so easy. You know, now I think about, gosh, my childhood is about oranges growing on my ears. I didn't have to worry about for being, I think that you hear those stories, it's very humbling. And gosh, like I come from a place of privilege, and I very much embrace that, even though I go on my soapbox and I get angry about a whole ton of stuff, but for good reasons. But I definitely come from a place of privilege, and I don't take that for granted.
Yeah, there's varying, and that's the other thing, is that like we all have to recognize there's varying degrees of privilege, and you're right that the place that you're born, I mean, the very first thing that sets you apart in this, let's say we're running a marathon. If this marathon were 24 miles, you're 12 miles ahead of everybody else just by the fact of where you're born. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's half the race on its own. And
Mm-hmm.
then add an additional like 8 miles to the race if your parents are good and they're together. Like
Right.
that's another factor. Like you're already in a 25-mile marathon, and I know marathons are slightly less than this, but if you were to run a 25-mile marathon, you've run 20 of them by just those two things that you have no control over whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So it is ironic to see a lot of people and a lot of our friends and people that we've known have very kind of publicly and done things to show like a complete lack of understanding of this topic. But I do agree that like it's going in the right direction, and like it feels like I could use a little bit less of the social media soapboxing that like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the keyboard social justice warrior thing, I could use less of that.
Mm-hmm.
But the conversations are great. I think that 2020 has done a lot in terms of pushing things forward again, in terms of civil rights and equality and everything.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful for the younger generation too. I mean, I think a lot of people are hating on the millennials and the generation after that, but I see a lot of promise. I see a lot of
Yeah.
slight laziness that will lead to effectiveness and efficiency, because I do think that efficiency stems from laziness.
Millennials are getting a really bad rap. And it's funny because like several years ago, I think I remember actually being at one of the retreats and talking about millennials in a pretty negative way. And then it was like, maybe like a year later, I was like, it's kind of messed up that we say the things that we say about like an entire generation of people. Like maybe that should stop. But as I started to actually learn a little bit more, well, one, I learned that I'm only 1 year off from being a millennial myself. So I was
Hmm.
born in 1980. What year were you born? Can I ask that
I'm
question?
86, so I am a
80. You
millennial.
are a
An
millennial.
old, an old millennial. Like I
So
still
I,
remember VHS tapes, and I don't have a cell
oh,
phone when I was a
shush.
kid. Like I got there.
You are I was literally slandering you while you were standing there.
You pick when you want to make your jabs. I didn't want to make a jab. I just met you, and you showed me that I don't speak Cantonese very well, so I didn't feel like making fun of you at the time.
Well, I feel like each generation gets a lot of things right, and then there's other things that they work on. Um, if you look at, it's interesting because like I have this book on relationships that is the next thing to be coming out, and when I was looking at numbers and statistics, millennials are actually doing much better when it comes to the success of their relationships. They're doing far better when it comes to like finding sustainable career paths. They're doing a much better job in a lot of areas. Like a lot of Gen Zs and Gen Xs like look and say like they're lazy or like they can't handle, stress or whatever it might be. And there might be some truth to that because like the opportunities that are afforded have been the best yet. So yeah,
Mhm.
like, but now they get, COVID has become their struggle. I feel like COVID is like the first thing that they are encountering. They're like, this sucks, and we got to figure out how to deal with this.
Mhm.
And now they're just like every other generation that has to, that's dealt with some shit. Like everybody has now dealt with some crap, and we're gonna move forward with it. But I was gonna ask you this. You said that you read part of the book.
Mm.
Tell me about this.
Yeah. Um, I think it was cool because I could hear you writing it. And I wish you made it an audiobook because I think it would be fun. It was fascinating to hear about how much tenacity and how much perseverance you put into your first marriage. And it was incredible about how much reflection you gained from that whole experience. And there's, I thought about all the arranged marriages that used to happen back in the day and how they were put together for necessity. They were put together because two families said, "You two, scooch them together, make kids, continue the human race."
Yeah.
And now we live in a world where there are all these pressures to not screw up, and there's all these pressures to make it seem like your life is perfect, with your two awesome kids, and your faith, and there's all this. There's just so much judgment from everybody, and I wondered, the biggest part that I took, and again, I've read the first big chunk, and I skimmed the rest to make it to today. But,
It wasn't a test. You didn't have to like complete it before our,
I
our
know, but I
conversation.
wanted to. I just wanted to. But I just wondered how many relationships stayed together because of societal pressure. And one of my closest friends is a divorce attorney. And when I first met him, I was like, wow, you must be an angry person. And as I continued to develop our friendship, and he's one of my closest friends now, I think about, gosh, like, you make the world a better place. You help
Yeah.
people who are truly miserable get out of their misery. And there's nothing wrong with being single. And there's nothing wrong with saying that your first marriage was not a bashing success. That's ridiculous to say that. And it's ridiculous to say that a marriage and a wedding is a milestone that everybody has to hit. So I thought that was really cool. I also liked all the little like illustrations with a little triangle and little icons and stuff. That was really nice for my visual brain. And then I thought about all the like the honeymoon friendships that I had. And I was like, yeah, those are nice. I don't feel as bad anymore.
So did you feel like, and you can critique, you can say whatever you like. I want it plain and straight. Did you feel like the framework made sense? Was it?
Yeah, I think it did make sense. I think that when you talk about quality time, sustainability, and like the effort that is required for those, what was the third one? Gosh, sustainability.
It's categorized into sustainability versus desire, and kind of this quality time thing that's the underlying basis.
This thing.
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought it made sense. I think that it's really hard when you have so many facets of a relationship to boil it down to 3 shapes in a line. Mm-hmm. But it made sense to me. And it made sense about how when you are deficient in one, that everything falls apart.
Yeah. So did you get to the pieces where it breaks out so desire and sustainability as each having like kind of 5 parts to them? Like this was, so for me in going, and I'm not going to sit here and test you on this. So for me, like when I was looking at the whole subject, I was like, this is the most stupid thing in the world, because when I was going to counseling or the books that I would read, or, all the different, I think I spent $100,000+ on counseling over the course of 15 years, let alone, the time and everything like that. But people always would go back, and it wasn't just the, friends and non-professionals that would do this. The professionals would do the same thing. They would go to these little trite sayings, go back and do what you did when you were first dating. And I'm like, man, how do you do that? Like in any relationship, like I used to play with my best friend and we used to play Legos. So you're saying if our friendship isn't functioning today, I'm just going to go back and play some Legos. Like that's what's going to fix things. And then they go to other things like, oh, it's all about communication. It's like, really, why are some of my closest friendships, and closest relationships with people that we don't like talk that much about, like anything? Like we're not, we don't have to. So it was my answer to kind of the oversimplification of relationships. I felt like there are different moving pieces, and if you understand those pieces, then you can get things to get back on track. You can figure out what makes a good relationship sustainable versus there's a lot of people that are, like you said, there's a lot of people in unhealthy marriages. If 50%, this was a number that I also debated, because in some places in the world, divorce rates are like 70 to 80%. Other places, millennials are actually doing far better. They're around 40% in the US. But if you just went to that 50% number, those are the ones that actually leave, right? Of the ones that stay, how many of them are actually happy versus just staying because they're obligated or scared or whatever it might be? Right.
And within the States, it is so easy to get married and so insanely difficult to get divorced.
Yeah. Yeah. There's weird, marriage is one of those things that I could talk on forever. It's just like, it's such a weird thing that's attached to government / social stigma / everything. And in reality, it's just supposed to be this thing between two people. That's really what it should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
It's not easy. It's very hard. We struggle
Let's
with it
talk.
every day.
Yeah, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about. I'm curious. In launching your wedding business, we're gonna completely spin. Unless you have other things that you wanted to add on this side.
No, go for it.
Okay. I'm very curious. When you launched your wedding photography business, what were the steps that you kind of took to get things off the ground initially? Like, what were, if you were to go back and do it over again, what would be your process?
Uh, looking back, how I launched it was that I knew very little about photography itself. So practicing was a big thing for me and just constantly photographing. And the great thing about being a traveling consultant was that I had lots of things to photograph, everything from the planes, the travel, the airport, the client site, even though that they weren't excited about that. But going out new cities, even though I never saw new cities, but just like, transporting between the hotel and the client site. There were lots of cool things to photograph, lots of different types of light. So I think constantly working at it was step number one. And then number two is how to get new clients. And for me, I had no idea. But at that point, I barely knew how to use a camera. So I said, I'm going to do as much free work as humanly possible because there are very few strings attached when you do things for free, especially when it's low pressure. So I didn't want to do any weddings, but a lot of engagement sessions, a lot of fake weddings. So people would get back into their wedding dresses and bounce around and stuff. And granted, a glorified portrait / engagement shoot is not similar to a wedding. So then you had to do step 3, which was assist for free forever. So I did a lot of free assisting work and I saw a lot of different styles of wedding photographers, how they ran their businesses, how they would lead. And I would craft these emails and phone calls to be, I would like to help you in any way that I can. And I would like to learn and exchange. And I will not poach your business. I will not use the photographs I take at your wedding from my own portfolio. I will not step on any toes. So I had to do a lot of research on what toe stepping activities would be in order to say, hey, photographer, I'm not a threat to you. With that said, I think I emailed about 100 wedding photographers in the Boston area. 2 got back to me. And I'm very thankful for those 2. So
This is gold.
Yeah.
Anthony, I think you got a couple audio snippets in here. So Nicole, what would you say to the common kind of advice that's given today? Never work for free. Don't assist for free. Don't shoot for free. That's a bad idea.
I disagree respectfully, because I think that those relationships that you build by offering volunteer services in exchange for learning, I mean, it goes back to apprenticeship and mentorship and just helping out somebody else. I think it's really worthwhile. Why, and maybe I'm old fashioned, but why am I supposed to get paid for something when I truly am probably more of a burden?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with working for free when you're learning and you're starting off. But I would also put into the consideration that don't fuck up, because if you fuck up somebody's wedding, that's awful. Like that's you're going to go to a bad place later on in life. Like that's just not great.
Go to a bad place in life.
So be very considerate about what you're doing and what the worst thing possible could happen, and be very cognizant of that. We're starting off for paid work, I would charge as much as I possibly could. And then I would take all of that money and I would hire people who are far more experienced than I, so that I could have a security blanket to say, I don't know what I'm doing, but I got paid this money and I want to hire you so that you can help me so that I can learn and make sure that I don't mess up. And I've been that person to help new photographers before, and I've been happy to do it for them.
Yeah.
And I think that by doing that, we will lift the industry together. We will not have people who are working for pennies on the dollar. And I don't know, I think working for free is okay. Everyone needs a photographer. And, if you're going to grab a couple who's having their 10th wedding anniversary, I'm not damaging the industry by doing a quick shoot for them and learning how to pose in really difficult light. So I'm okay with that.
Such a weird mindset. And by the way, you don't have to be respectful about anything here. This is a place to offend. This is a place to, all I care about is that you're authentic. But to the people that say like you should never do free work, I want to scream like a giant F you. Like that is, That is some of the worst advice I have ever heard. And it's not the way that I know most legit people that come up. Just like you said, you don't charge when you can't deliver a specific type of product because you're new to it. You don't yet know. You haven't cut your teeth. And when you're not charging, it releases you of the liability of like, well, if they're not paying for something, then their expectations can't be that high. So it allows you to have this freedom and flexibility to learn and to grow. They're getting value because they're not paying for something, and they're definitely getting more than what they, are paying for. Otherwise, they should hire somebody that actually has experience. And then on top of that, I've had so much business come from strategic free events, basically, where like we will partner with vendors and other people that are coming up in the industry to do styled shoots and creative shoots where we'll create concepts and everybody's working for free and we get tons of business out of it. Like some of our best experiences have been that. And I can name so many of these, but the industry, and I feel like it's oftentimes it's the grumpies, it's the people that are older, that are threatened, are the ones that are saying things like, don't ever do this. And it's true. Like, hey, if I've shot, like at this point in my career, doing a wedding for exposure makes absolutely no sense. That to me would harm the industry. Like that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But being smart and doing these things when you're kind of coming up, so critical. So I
Yeah,
love
you've got
that
to
you
get your
said that.
name out there. Yeah, you've got to get your name out there. You've got to find ways to make relationships and those connections. And I remember way back in the day, I styled shot all the time. I would connect with all the wedding planners and all the venue coordinators and say, what styled shoots can we coordinate for you to show more work? And that was a great way for me to push out lots and lots of content very quickly because I had none to share. And the business that Jason and I started last year, that Venn diagram business that wasn't awful, we did a lot of free work to get our name out there. And
Yeah.
it was necessary. I don't know how else we could have.
Yeah. So the other piece I love about that story that you told was how many people that you contacted just to get two people to call you back, and then going out and actually assisting and working with other people for free to get started. And again, you're absolutely right. Like if someone reaches out to me and they're like, I'd like to be an assistant. My rate's $20. I'm like, we got a whole team of people that want to come out. It is a complete liability bringing you out to my shoots. Like there is no chance that that's going to happen, let alone I'm going to pay you to be a liability. Like that's insane to me. But I love the way that you're kind of describing the process because it is a grind. And if you're unwilling to do those things, if you're unwilling to, cut your teeth working for free, assisting, carrying things, then it's probably not a good fit. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to stick around long enough to get any substantial experience or make a dent.
Definitely. And I think to answer your second question in terms of what would I do differently, I would have taken a lot of shortcuts. Like knowing what I know now, if I could rewind 10 years ago, I'd take a whole ton of shortcuts. I would ingest a whole ton of money into different avenues for marketing. And I think I would be able to zoom ahead much more. But 10 years ago, you're bootstrapping it. Everything,
Yeah.
you're kind of broke. I'm kind of broke. And I'm trying to figure out how to do all this covertly without my parents finding out. And, putting in a whole ton of money it was risky for me at the time. And I was scared. But if I had more courage, I would have just dumped in a few $1,000s, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars just to jumpstart the first couple of years.
Well, tell me this, because that's the mentality you can afford to have now that you have a few thriving businesses, right? But most of us, when you're first starting out, you're doing exactly what you did, which is bootstrapping it and figuring out how to make it work. So if you were to say, place into two buckets, one bucket of some of the more effective things that you did to get clients and some of the less effective things that you did, what would those things be?
The most effective things were assisting other photographers because
To get
eventually,
clients.
they
Interesting.
can only shoot one wedding per day. So if you come and approach them and say, I'd like to create some sort of a relationship, I'd like to, I respect you And eventually, when they have referrals, who are they going to go to? They're going to go to people that they like, people that they trust. So to be honest, I
What an
found that other
incredibly
photographers,
counterintuitive idea.
I guess, I think that it makes a lot of sense. Most solo wedding photographers, what, average 30 weddings per
Yeah.
year?
Yeah.
And I would say that they probably get far more than that, but
Hmm.
in terms of inquiries. But I think the hard thing is that you need to be priced at a point where you are not undercutting them. If they start at
For
a certain
sure.
price point and you start at half, that's not going to work
Hmm.
out. So you're going to have to find a way to come in very close to them so that they feel comfortable referring you. And
Hmm.
if they would feel more comfortable referring you if you gave them a little bit of a referral kickback, then so be it.
Hmm.
Because you are giving them a kickback for a guaranteed booking
Yeah.
versus paying for marketing where, sure, you have analytics and insights and things like that, but you don't exactly know if it's going to equate to bookings.
Sure.
So I would say that that is the number one thing that has gotten me bookings, making those relationships with other photographers. And then the second thing would be more relationships with vendors, specifically venues and wedding planners.
Yeah.
Some wedding planners are very high end. They're not going to match you if you're a newer person, but there are wedding planners that are also up and coming that might be good to connect with so that when you guys grow together, everybody lifts each other up again. So it's pretty solid there. Venues, that's a little harder now because I think everybody is, throwing albums in their way and doing
For
everything that they
sure.
can. But I'm sure that there are ways to understand, what are other venues, or sorry, what are other venues not providing you that I can provide you? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just asking those very specific questions. Things that I think are not worth it. I think certain listing sites like Wedding Wire and The Knot, they haven't worked out for me.
Hmm.
But I do think that's specific on the region that you live in and the price point that you
Well,
live in.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, those types of marketing has not worked with us.
Yeah. I think that any sort of too good to be true service, like a too good to be true SEO service from Joe from some unknown country, those tend to not work very well either. Those tend to just install a whole ton of stuff onto the back door of your websites and bring it all crashing down. So that doesn't seem to work very well either.
Interesting.
Diversifying too much, if you're photographing food and interiors and dogs and Etsy shops and headshots and weddings and divorce parties, also probably
Yep.
not great.
Yep. I love it. I love this little segment of advice. One thing that I would add to what you said, I couldn't agree more, as far as like I've never heard anybody talk about the photographer side, like building relationship with the photographers, but it makes sense. And what you're saying is intuitive if you understand actually how other photographers work, because you're right. Once we have our relationships, we refer to each other. And the vendors and the venue side and all that. One of the things I wanted to say on this is when you are creating these relationships, create these relationships with the intention to serve, not the intention to take. I've had a lot of people come and work with me and do very major no-nos. Like on my jobs, they hand out their business cards to the wedding planner. Like, oh, I'm with Pi, but I actually have my own photography company. Now, not only is that highly offensive to me, like you are on my time, on my dime with my client and you're pushing your services. That is so with anybody that does that for me, it's one and done. You're out. Like if I catch them doing it on the job, I actually ask them to leave like right then. I can do without you. I don't need to have somebody there marketing to my clients. But I want you to think for 1 second, if Nicole, if you were the coordinator, the venue, the day of, the wedding planner, any of those things, the florist, and one of your assistants came and handed a card and said, I'm working for Nicole today, but I'm actually running my own business. From the standpoint of those other vendors, what are they thinking about that person?
Slimy comes to mind.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, why be constantly pushing yourself Everybody is there focused on that day for one reason, and that reason is the couple. So
For sure.
maybe get off your selfish, self-absorbed situation of growing your own business. Do a good job first, grow your business later.
Yes. And I think if everybody understood that, they wouldn't do it. But what they think they're doing is they think that they're networking when they do that. And in reality, not only do they not get an invite back from Nicole, but they managed to piss off everybody and to get blacklisted by everybody simultaneously. So it is the most damaging thing. And in reality, it is the most damaging thing where in their mind, in their perception, they think that it's networking. So it was one of those things where I was like, man, if there was one thing to drill home with how to network right, from everything that you said, it's to go out, to create relationships and to serve and to be of service with the intention of patience. Growth will, for your own business, will come with time and patience and not going out seeking, gain.
Yeah. There's different types of hustle. And I think that type of quote hustle will do much more damage than good. And I think another type of hustle is specifically undercutting the market by pinpointing out certain individuals. And what I mean by that is some people will say, oh, tell me what your top choice and photographer is charging, and I'll charge them 10% less. And that's very common, I think, in the contractor industry. We're doing a lot of renos on homes, and that seems to be just the norm. Contractors will say, figure out, I'll beat it by 20%. And that's just it. I don't know how that's sustainable. I don't know how that works. And I think that there's a quality to not only reno work, but definitely a quality in wedding photography. And to me, I would be very weary of that, because
I am too. As a consumer, you're weary of it, right? Because if you can just trim off 20% of your costs, where are you taking that from?
Right. And it's kind of like eating really cheap sushi. Like, someone's going to get sick.
Exactly. I like it. Don't eat cheap sushi, and don't undercut just to get the job.
Yeah. Sushi looks brown. It shouldn't be.
That's going to be your quote.
I'll take it.
Okay, so now as you've grown the wedding photography business, and as you're kind of moving into Trapology, what things did you feel like, going into that business? It was very clear to me that you knew what you were doing. I mean, not only your experience in consulting, but then you'd already spun up a successful business. You seemed to get that business off the ground. I mean, it was like a matter of months, it felt like, and you guys were up and running and it was doing great. How does that experience compare to your first business?
The business of wedding photography had very low overhead. I worked from home. I didn't need a studio. I already had all the equipment that I needed, because in consulting, I didn't spend any money because I had no time to spend any money. So I bought all these toys in hopes that it would patch the holes of my very sad life. And it didn't, which is why we're here.
It's always a good choice. Buy things to fill the gaps.
Right. Yeah. Therapy of retail. So I had a lot of the gear already, and really the only expenses that I needed to get were the legal ones. So making it legitimate, making sure that galleries were all set up, and websites, and hosting, and email, and they all added up to very nominal things at the end of the year.
Yeah.
With Trapology, we wanted a fantastic location, and we saw what other competitors were doing, and they were mostly in dungy basements or really crappy office buildings.
I'm telling you, it was the psychos that just converted what they already had.
That's probably. We just didn't want that. We also didn't want it to look like an IKEA warehouse. We wanted things to look as theatrical and as immersive as possible. And we picked storylines that may not be the easiest ones to build. We have the jail cell, the Chinese restaurant gambling ring. We've got the coffee shop BDSM secret sex room. We've got all these things that
one sounds fantastic.
It's pretty fun. It's very rated R. You got to show ID upon arrival. But it's great. It's great for first dates. It's also great for apparently we're the
Great for
We're the
first
place.
dates. Like,
Yeah, we're
hey,
the
we're going
place
to go
where
to a BDSM escape room.
secret BDSM room.
Secret
We
BDSM.
found out that we are the place that swingers go to see if they're a good fit for one another.
Wait, this is a real thing. Like, people go to trap. Okay, can you say that again?
Yeah,
What?
groups of swingers will go and they will plan get-togethers at our escape room, and they'll play these escape rooms together as part of, hey, let's get to know each other and let's see if we're a good chemistry fit.
This is hilarious.
Yeah.
But they're not allowed to do anything at the escape room.
No, they're not. They have to keep their clothes on and their masks now.
Okay, good. Okay. It would
But
present a very significant hygiene issue.
yes, yes, there's not enough cleaning in the world for that. Yeah, the game is called the Booby Trap, and it's a secret BDSM room that you have to infiltrate. Anyways, but there's intense, intense overhead that's required of this. There's rent, and there's labor, and there's technology, and there's huge upfront costs, and it was a big investment. So yes, we had to keep it. We had to get it up and running quickly because we would
I
have
see.
bled out.
Yeah,
And
that's a dramatic. Were you guys self-funding that?
yeah, we didn't want to go into investors and things of that sort. So we tried to do it all as in-house as possible.
Look at the balls on you guys. Jeez,
Well,
that
Jason,
is
Jason had to get handy.
that's crazy. So what was that? I mean, if you don't mind sharing, what was that initial investment to get this thing up and running?
Jason did more of the numbers. As I mentioned, he's more of the numbers guy, but I think it was
Yeah.
well into the six figures.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
because back in the day, even now, finding a space for an escape room was very difficult because the concept was so foreign. So
Yeah.
when we pitched the idea to our now landlord, I mean, I definitely didn't say BDSM room. I think I said something around the lines of like, "Oh, it's a museum, and you've got to find the stolen pieces of artwork."
This
So
is going to
she thought,
become the swingers' first date resort.
so she thought that we were going to, replicate a museum, and
Okay.
our first game was a jail cell. So there's that. So she requested a very hefty security deposit.
Ah,
I think it was almost 3 months. So we didn't
3
really get a
months.
whole ton of build out time either. So yeah, and then there the money and the costs. Of course, the first few months we were in the red because there's no way that we're going to be breaking even the first couple
For
months.
sure.
So advertising was a lot of begging, was a lot of me saying, I will pay you to come to my escape room if you promise to leave a review and shout this on the rooftops. So that was the
That's
first 6 months
amazing.
of our life. Yeah, and luckily it had a lot of traction. Luckily, we opened in the summer where there were a lot of tourists, a lot of college kids, a lot of young professionals. And then we discovered the gold mine of corporate
Yeah.
and big events. We were lucky to be able to speak the language of corporate to say, hey, you are looking for a team building event where you are also looking for bar, alcohol, catering, all under one roof. Because to find a restaurant to have a booked out space for 40 to 60 people, non-existent, but we can
Yeah,
offer
that's
that for
difficult.
you.
Oh, that's
And on top of
amazing.
that,
Anthony, can
we
you
can
pull up the
coordinate
site right
everything.
now?
Yeah,
Oh, I
and
want to I
we
want to see
coordinate
the
it all.
So that's incredible. So you guys had to get your liquor license, food service, all that stuff as well for the space then.
So another thing is that we don't want to own a liquor license because a liquor license would be close to $300,000 to $400,000 in Boston, and there's only so many of them.
What?
So what we've done instead is that we partnered with some of the alcohol suppliers and bartenders who did have liquor licenses, and we would have one-time liquor licenses bestowed onto us. And those were the connections and the relationships that I had made in the wedding industry because there are wedding venues that would have outside bartenders.
Oh,
So I
interesting.
grabbed them and said, hey, I've got this new thing I'm working on. I need you to serve alcohol.
That's crazy. Anthony, can you browse the site a little bit? You gave me like a little taste of it, Anthony, and then you took it away. It was like a little tease here.
Oh, if you go all the way to the bottom, this is my favorite part. Mr. Chris Evans is on the left. I spent 4 hours in
What?
the basement with him, and I was very happy.
That is incredible. Tell me about that. How was that?
Yeah, so this actually is cool. It goes back to the swearing part. We created we created a custom escape room for this company called Omaze. And Omaze creates viral videos and it's also a fundraising platform so that they'll, oh gosh, I feel like I could have started over. We created a viral escape room with Omaze and Chris Evans in hopes to raise money for a cancer nonprofit. They provide housing options for families and kids with cancer. So we created this viral video with Chris Evans. The video went viral, and then people could donate money to have raffle tickets to play an escape game with Chris Evans.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So you got to just kind of hang out. And did you actually get a chat with Chris Evans and get to know him a little bit?
Yeah. So he is a Bostonian, and he swears like you would not believe. And the film crew had such a hard time because we would be running this escape room, and we ran the escape room probably 8 or 9 different times to try to get the right people for this video. And you should watch the video. It's really funny. Yeah. But he just kept swearing at these people. And I was like, man, this is very authentic, because when we are actually game mastering games, we are also authentic. Swearing at the players too. However, we don't have a whole ton of cameras pointed at us trying to create a video. And they, I guess in the editing process, they had such a hard time editing because every other word was an F-bomb.
That's hilarious. Is Chris a pretty nice guy?
Yeah, he's very down to earth. He's very cool. Super easy to work with, and very easy on the eyes.
Yes. I mean, I could definitely agree with that. I feel like as a straight man, we need to normalize. Straight men need to normalize calling other straight men pretty.
Yeah.
He's very pretty.
He is a pretty man.
But
yes, that was a fun project.
If coming from another straight person, like if one of your girlfriends was to say, you look hot today, or if one of my guy friends was to say, you look hot today, and it's like, they're straight, I almost feel like that's bigger praise than if it were to come from the opposite sex or somebody who are gay, because like it's platonic. So for them to say it means that much more. Would you not agree with this?
Yeah. And they mean it. And there's no hidden agenda. They're just giving you a compliment saying, hey, you look really nice today.
Exactly. Means that much more. Okay. So Trapology and normalize straight praise of each other. Great. It's more than impressive what you created here. And you've also mentioned that you have a third thing, this Venn diagram. What is this? You said
when COVID hit, we needed a way to very quickly sanitize all of the games. And how people clean for COVID seems to be a Clorox
how you clean
mix.
For sex parties? Yes.
But it was just like essentially a wet rag service. And I was like, that doesn't feel sterile at all. Yeah. And it's called a wet rag service. They pretty much just put a bleach mixture and they wipe down all frequently high touched surfaces. But for an escape room, everything is frequent high touch. Everyone's touching everything. So we needed a way to prove that, hey, consumers, come to our escape room. It is a private experience. You have very little contact with our staff, just the people you come with, and you can play our game and feel safe. So we Jason researched and found electrostatic spraying, which is essentially electrically charged little micro droplets that go into the air. And unlike wet rag surfaces, they will touch the tops, the sides, the bottoms, essentially everything. So everything will be killed upon impact or 120 seconds after impact. So we felt extremely safe, and we thought it was a really nice way to say we are a really great indoor safe option for entertainment. So we got all of this equipment. We spent a huge bundle on it. Jason had to pull a lot of strings to get this equipment. It's the same equipment that they are using on airplanes to sanitize and disinfect, as well as hospitals. So my mother does a lot of COVID testing at a major hospital in Boston, and she said she gave the check mark on that. So we're like, okay, perfect. And then we got shut down for many months. We said, we have this expensive equipment. It's amazing. It'd be a shame to put it to waste. So we spun it off into a separate business.
Of course you did.
It is called Sterile Guys. And the tagline is coming for germs.
This is amazing.
Now we
Sterile guys.
sanitize, we sanitize workplaces and homes. We provide regular sanitation services as well as on-site rapid services if your space had an outbreak.
And you're
So now
also
that's what we do.
normalizing being sterile as a guy, which I appreciate
And it's
because I'm
okay.
sterile with 4 children.
Right. All of your swimmers have little bouquets of roses. 4 kids is a lot. Gosh.
So that's okay. So now you have a third business. This is number 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how is this business done? I mean, I would imagine it's the perfect time for it.
We have to share what electrostatic is spraying over and over and over, but it's been EPA approved. The CDC approves it. I mean, it's a non-toxic solution. It allows immediate reentry, so you don't have to like spray and then people have to wait for several hours to come back in. It's great. It's safe. And to be honest, this is the first business that is truly easy to scale than the other ones. So I feel like for each business, we're learning more and more about how to operate. And for every business, it's easier and quicker to scoot it up there. But it's also different. I mean, it's not as entertaining and goofy or like emotional based as weddings. So every marketing strategy is a little different for all of our businesses.
That's so cool. Anthony, I'd like you to pull up sterile guys without getting any imagery that
I've
we
been trying
don't
to
wanna
figure out
see.
like how to spell it. Because I've got sterile guys and I got sterile guys, and that's not really a good thing to pop
Yeah.
up.
Oh no.
Pull it up without any bad imagery.
SterileGuys.
Oh, so it's literally just spelled out. Okay.
Sterile guys.
That's not what he was seeing on his screen. He was seeing,
Oh, okay. I see.
oh,
Before
I should
Trapology
put
was
sanitation
Trapology.
again.
Before Trapology was
go.
Trapology. We wanted to
Sterile
name it
guys.
Boston Key Party.
I love puns. You guys are so funny.
Yeah. But do you know what a key party is?
I know what a tea party is.
No, a
but
key
not
party.
Not a key party, no.
Oh, you can Google that later.
Oh, is that going to be something special too?
Yeah, Google on an incognito tab.
Was the incognito tab designed for anything other than porn? Like that, like they might as well have called it
The porn tab.
Anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand here. So what's super interesting is you're absolutely right. Like as entrepreneurs, usually it went the same route with us. Like our very first business that was successful was service oriented. It's the wedding photography side, which we figured out a way to scale, but it's been very difficult to scale, to be honest, compared to anything else. Then our second one was education, which was far easier to scale. And then our third was software oriented, which is much, much easier than, both. And now we're like, it's kind of that, after you gain experience, you kind of start looking for these things that are a little bit easier. Like you can put the same special sauce into and, it's a bit easier. Like that's one of the things on the wedding side that's so frustrating is we talked earlier in the photography space, at least in the portraiture space, at best, you can maybe turn a wedding photography client into an engagement shoot, a maternity, newborn, and then family shoots, right? So maximum, you're going to turn this into kind of like maybe a once a year type, client experience. Whereas with Trapology, if someone enjoys it, they're probably going to come multiple times a year. So acquiring one customer, you can spend a little bit more money on the marketing and everything else because they're going to be more long-term. Is that what you're seeing in kind of the Trapology side of the business?
Yeah, we definitely found that the customer acquisition cost was a little bit easier once you acquired them and wooed them and said, come back, we have 6 other games, or bring your companies and bring your friends and your in-laws, we'll lock them up for you.
Yeah,
but I think
commercial
that,
plans.
Yeah, for sure. But I also think that, recurring revenue was a little bit different for us. And that was something we really struggled with because it's not a subscription-based thing. Once you play one game, you're kind of done with that specific game. So we always had to keep engineering it. And we also needed to, for some people, they would just say, oh, we're just going to come and play it as a fun weekend thing. But for some people, they say, oh, we're going to leave it for a birthday. We're going to leave it for a special occasion. And that's fine too. So for any future business that we will think about, we're definitely going to find a niche market and a need, and also recurring revenue, because gosh, in the wedding photography space, we work so hard to get one client for one
For
day.
sure. For
It
sure.
is so hard, and so much stress goes into it. Competition is so high. It's both difficult and easy to differentiate. But yeah, who knows? But the hope is that business number 4 and 5, they'll be easier.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are going that route, and it's incredible to have just watched from the sidelines, like, you know, how very smart friends like yourself have pivoted during this time period, and kind of moved into, you know, the weddings are going to come back, but in the meantime, we can kind of redirect efforts and energy. It sucks to have two businesses being shut down. I'm hoping that, you know, the PPP and like you guys are getting some lease forgiveness and that kind of stuff incorporated, because I can't imagine. Has that been part of what's helped to keep things going in 2020?
We have not gotten a whole ton of forgiveness from our landlord. However, the variety of the grants and such have been very helpful. And I think
Good.
that Jason is extremely financially conservative. So we had a nest egg that we were going to use on all this expansion. And unfortunately, we're just using on expenses and payroll, which is fine.
Yeah.
We will come back stronger, and we're pretty confident. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I would have thought during the time period like that, the landlords, their own mortgages or whatever they had, were essentially taken care of so that they can cut those breaks to their tenants. In a lot of cases, it's not happening. And I don't know how long we're supposed to just pay leases and rent on buildings that we're no longer using or like can't use, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a certain amount of time on that for sure. So when do you guys think you'll be back up and running?
Hard to say. I think that having the vaccine created and distributed in Massachusetts works in our favor. Phase 2 is supposed to start, I think, next week, February 1st.
Okay.
My mom's already been vaccinated. My brother, who's special needs, is already vaccinated. So I think that, you know, as it starts rolling out and as the world becomes a little bit more normal, I have high hopes that hopefully by summer, fall, things will come a little bit back to at least breaking even. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, no, I think that's reasonable in terms of a timeline, and I very much hope for the same thing. You got to get these things, like, we need your businesses to be operating and running, and for you guys to be working on spinning up 4 and 5.
Yeah, people will be bored, I think, once they're looking for things to do and once they are safe. And we're hoping to be there when they get bored, to say this is a fun, safe thing to do with your friends and family.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Nicole, you are an incredibly inspiring person, to say the least. I am honored and privileged to call you a friend, and I'm grateful that you were able to come onto the podcast. So in the meantime, well, give us your websites, your for our audience to check in on all the things we've shown all, but is there a hub? Is there a place where they can follow kind of all the latest and greatest, or do you recommend them just going to each website, which we will link in the description?
Yeah, well, if you are somebody who is looking for a wedding photographer and an escape room and somebody to sterilize your stuff, I'd find you to be the number one client of mine. So thank you.
If you can go to all three, patronize all three businesses.
If you are all different. But no, I appreciate you linking. I appreciate you having me on here. You are incredible. And yeah, thanks for linking all those there for me.
We will link them all up, and you can be a customer of just one. You don't have to do all three.
But if you do, let me know.
If you do,
I'd like to do a case study for you.
Well, it's awesome chatting with you, friend. Well, that's it for this episode. So check out Nicole's work. It's so funny because, her imagery is absolutely incredible. But as a business person, you and Jason are a force to be reckoned with. So I'm excited for all the things, and we'll have to have you back on. So maybe you can come back in a few months and give us a little update on everything, and especially if you have any new ventures going on.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, homie. We'll see ya.